Looks can be deceiving. This 14-year-old with bushy bangs is a cold-blooded killer. She fatally shot her mother in the face and tried to kill her stepfather. As Jim Murray reports, it took the jury no time at all to decide this case.
We, the jury, sentenced the defendant, Carly Madison Gregg, to life imprisonment. As to count 2, we, the jury, sentenced the defendant, Carly Madison Gregg, to life imprisonment.
A baby-faced teenager hears a jury's damning verdict. A home surveillance camera caught the moment 15-year-old Carly Gregg shot her mother to death in their home. She creeps through the house, a handgun behind her. Moments later, the sickening sound of gunshots. Then she coolly sits in the kitchen and lures her stepfather into an ambush by texting him from her mother's phone. "When will you be home, honey?" Her stepfather testified about what happened when he returned.
When I opened the door to the kitchen there, gun went off in my face.
Wounded the shoulder, he frantically called 911. Police body cam video shows Carly appeared calm and composed when she was arrested. Her hands were swabbed for gunshot residue.
Which hand did you shoot with?
The jurors were shown a disturbing diary entry written by Carly that went, "You don't need family, it's okay to be evil."
Carly Gregg is evil, and that's not easy to say, but the truth of the matter is sometimes evil comes in young packages.
In a heart-stopping moment, the prosecutor brandished the murder weapon and reenacted the crime.
Fired once, you hear her mother scream. Fired twice, you hear her mother scream. 1, 2, 3, 4, you hear the third shot.
Lawyers argued she should be found not guilty by reason of insanity, but the jury clearly didn't buy it.
She doesn't know what was going on at that time. We're asking you to find her not guilty by reason of insanity.
After just 1 hour of deliberation, they returned with a guilty verdict. Carly sobbed as the jury recommended a sentence of life without parole.
We feel like life imprisonment really is the only sentence that meets the crime, regardless of her age.
Colin Griffith.
17-year-old Colin Griffith graduates from high school. His mom couldn't be prouder. She even bought him a $26,000 car as a graduation present. They also went on expensive vacations together, including a trip to Australia. But today, Colin Griffith is behind bars, charged with brutally stabbing his loving mom to death.
He's dangerous. He showed zero remorse. Zero remorse.
Here's the shocking twist. Last year on Valentine's Day, Colin Griffith shot his dad inside their own home.
Colin Griffith was arrested back in February of 2023 for shooting and killing his father in Oklahoma. Those charges were later dropped.
He claimed his dad attacked him, and it was self-defense when he opened fire. There were no witnesses, and prosecutors released him, saying there was a lack of evidence to bring him to trial. Lincoln County, Oklahoma prosecutor Adam Panther said,
No, we can only make a decision based on the evidence we have at the time. It's impossible to sit back and predict somebody's future behaviors.
After killing his dad, Colin Griffith moved across the nation to live with his mom outside Tampa. They seemed to be getting along.
You're driving this better than you drive your own car.
But the social media video and stills posted by mom, Catherine Griffith, hid a dark secret. According to the family attorney, Colin was emotionally disturbed and twice threatened to kill his own mother.
He threatened multiple times and said this to numerous people that he was going to kill her, just like he killed his father.
Colin hates me, and I'm tired of this. Catherine Griffith texted a friend as she was about to pick him up at his grandmother's home at a senior living community. "I'm going to drive to get him, and if he doesn't get in the car, then the county can deal with him."
Neighbors see Colin and mom arguing outside, and Colin grabs his mother by the hair and drags her into the house.
They were yelling at one another, and he grabbed her and drug her in the house. And like I said, I don't know what happened on the inside. I really don't. I feel so sad for the mother. I mean, the grandmother. You know, she's a friend of mine, and I feel really, really bad for the whole family.
Cops say he stabbed her in the neck with a kitchen knife. He's claiming she accidentally fell on the knife. First dad, now mom.
It's important to understand when you look at this, you see a kid. When I look at him, I see a psychopath.
Next, we go to DeBerry, Florida, for the sentencing of Gregory Ramos. The 17-year-old pled guilty to first-degree murder, abuse of a dead body, and tampering with evidence in the death of Gail Clevenger, his very own mother. A little over 2 years earlier, the then 15-year-old claimed he came home from school to find his mom's empty car running in the driveway. His stepfather, who lived with the family, was out of town at the time. He called 911 to report a burglary and that his mother was missing.
911, where's your emergency?
I just got home and my house is completely trashed. It looks like someone broke in the side door.
Okay, how long have you been gone?
I've been gone all school day. I got home.
Are you there by yourself?
Yeah.
How old are you?
I'm 15.
Okay.
My mom's car is here and it's on, and she's not home. And she's supposed to go to work today, and I can't find her.
Okay, your mom is, okay. Your mom's car is there. Is there any other way she ever gets to work? Does she ever get a ride from anyone else?
No, it's on. The car is on. It's turned on.
The car is on, and you're sure she is not there?
I searched the entire place. I've been here for like 8 minutes. I've been looking again.
The dispatcher does her best to comfort the boy.
I want you to stay on the phone with me. We are not going to disconnect until I have an officer that is with you, okay?
Okay.
Are you safe where you're at?
Yeah.
When police arrive at the scene, Ramos seems distraught and points out items that were missing from the home.
I had a radio here, and I had an extension cord with an alarm clock, and then I had my $1,000 computer here. Doesn't make any sense.
When police questioned the teen, they discovered inconsistencies in his story. Eventually, Ramos admitted to strangling his mother the night before, after they fought over the boy's slipping graves.
All right, so I got home, I got in an argument with my mom. She slapped me across the face. She began to hit me. She started beating me. I didn't like it, so I strangled her to death.
Ramos took police to the body, which he confessed to burying beneath a church fire pit.
When I drove back to the church, I began to dig a hole. I dig a hole right under the fire pit. I dug a pretty deep hole, pretty deep, deep enough to put a body in, all right?
All the stones were arranged. It was a fire pit, and this is where him and his friends would always come. We did a cursory search. Unfortunately, her foot was protruding after digging down maybe 8 or 10 inches. That's not really a big place to where he put his mom.
All this time, my mom's decomposing body, I dragged it from my car to the fire pit. In which case, I tried to cut the wedding ring off her finger because I wanted to pawn it, but I couldn't. Threw her body in there, filled it back in, made it look all nice and natural, dumped my clothes, and then I went home. And I caught a ride to school with my friends, and yeah.
The teen was charged as an adult, but in order to avoid a trial and a possible life sentence, he pled guilty.
He pleaded guilty to first-degree murder, abuse of a dead human body, tampering with physical evidence. You understand that?
Yes, Your Honor.
Did you do it?
Yes, Your Honor.
These kids, very often we don't see the signs because they are showing no emotions at all. They are what we simply call flatline. They don't show any empathy, any sympathy, any remorse, any guilt.
At sentencing, while some family members spoke lovingly about Clevenger, the defendant's 84-year-old grandmother, the victim's mother, makes an unusual request. Instead of scolding the teen, she offers him a prayer.
Dear God, in the name of your son Jesus, I ask you to keep his soul pure and close to you. And Father, please protect him from any bodily harm. Keep him safe. And I ask these things in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. I love you, and I have praise. I'm here for you as long as God keeps me on this earth. And when I'm not here anymore, I'll still be watching over you. I promise you that.
Thank you for being here.
The little boy that I knew from a young age was brought up in a loving home with loving parents, and he's not the monster they're saying he is.
Ramos then delivers his own statement to the court.
Sir, you solemnly swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do. I want to thank you today, Your Honor, for letting me take the stand before you and make my statement. I'm I'm not standing here today to make excuses for myself. I'm here to honor and remember my mother. Not only have I stolen my mother from myself, but from everybody else as well. Because of my actions, I will never get to truly know my mom. I refuse to make excuses for myself. I can only plead for forgiveness.
Ramos was sentenced to 45 years in an adult prison. He'll be eligible for the possibility of parole after he serves a minimum of 25 years.
It was very boom, 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 boom. And normally you figure there's a point in time where somebody's going to break down or there's going to be some type of emotional. There was no emotional, nothing. There was nothing at all like that.
Your son is the victim and the killer is your granddaughter. Can you talk about that?
She's not my granddaughter. She was a troubled kid. How troubled, we had no idea.
This is Sierra Halseth and Aaron Guerrero. They're facing multiple charges, including murder with a deadly weapon, arson, robbery with a deadly weapon, conspiracy to conduct robbery, and multiple counts of fraudulent use of credit or debit cards at the Regional Justice Center in Las Vegas.
On April 9th, 2021, police arrived over in Dunphy Court. This is a single-family residence, the house of Daniel Halseth and his daughter Sierra. And when the police arrive, they find a body in the garage.
The teenage couple murdered Sierra's father, 45-year-old Daniel Halseth. They stabbed him over 60 times and attempted to burn his body and house.
One of his wrists appears as if it was partially dismembered, as if someone tried to literally saw through Daniel to take him apart.
Then they took his debit card and fled to Salt Lake City, indulged themselves, and opened a YouTube channel where they callously shared information like this.
Day 3 after murdering somebody.
Whoa! Don't put that on camera.
It was worth it.
And we had sex a lot today.
It was worth it. I got plenty of sex.
The teen dated in 2020, but their parents did not approve of the relationship, forcing them to end it.
Where did the evil come that was bred into a soul that murders their own father?
On April 9th, 2021, Daniel's lifeless body was discovered in the garage of his Las Vegas home. The teenagers were subsequently apprehended in Salt Lake City.
About 8:35 in the morning on the 13th, transit police encounter Aaron and Sierra using a tram. They're making out. They're just kind of living their best life on the tram in Utah. What happens essentially is they're asked for their tickets and they don't have any tickets. The transit authority asked them for their name or identification and Aaron and Sierra provided. They run a name check, up pops the warrant. And so Aaron and Sierra are taken into custody by Utah Transit Authority for the murder of Daniel and are promptly then ultimately brought back to Las Vegas. They get caught by just simply giving over their names and not paying for a tram ticket.
Throughout the court proceedings, the behavior of Sierra was starkly different from that of Aaron. Aaron Guerrero seems to be emotionally breaking down. When he was allowed to speak, he had this to say.
I ask for forgiveness as I get sentenced today, and I hope it brings you a little peace.
Meanwhile, Sierra Halseth appeared disinterested, bored, and detached from the gravity of the situation. She claimed that her father had physically and sexually abused her.
He locks me in place and starts pushing me and hitting me around.
Eventually, they were both found guilty by District Judge Tiara Jones.
55 days credit for time served. That is a total aggregate sentence of life in the Nevada Department of Corrections with the possibility of parole up to 22 years of good service.
For Sierra's grandmother, a lot has changed.
You're in a tough spot because your son is the victim and the killer is your granddaughter. Can you talk about that?
She's not my granddaughter.
She was stalked, tied up, strangled, and raped. Then her lifeless body was stuffed in a closet. This teen may look young and innocent, but this is the face of a brutal killer.
He broke into her house, watched her sleeping, and took videos of her sleeping. He then held her against her will, hit her, and strangled her. And I believe that he planned to kill numerous people and used my aunt as a warm-up, so to speak, for those other killings.
This is Gavin Ramsey. He was only 17 years old the day he found out he'll spend the rest of his life in prison for murdering his 98-year-old neighbor. Emotional doesn't even begin to describe it. Families on both sides, crying, fighting for the best interest of their loved one. Even Gavin's mom pleading with the court, saying her son is not evil.
I find him to be pathetic and a coward, and someone that preyed on the most vulnerable person that he could find and attack her in her most vulnerable moment, in the middle of the night when she was asleep.
She loved life. She loved being alive. She often talked that she just couldn't wait until she turned 100.
He was handcuffed and shackled and kept his head down for most of the time while he waited to learn his fate.
Had he not been caught, I have no doubt he would continue to escalate his crimes and continue killing.
Family members of 98-year-old Margaret Douglas pleaded with the judge to give her killer the maximum sentence.
I feel the escalation of his crimes through the years show his inability to reform. He is not safe to be on the streets. He will hurt people again. He will kill people again.
Because even though he stalked her, and even though he murdered her, and he videoed her, and abused her, and disrobed her, and used jelly, and stuffed the body in a closet, and had time to search and ransack the house and find the wallet, he was always mindful of the time, Your Honor.
17-year-old Gavin Ramsey pleaded no contest to murdering Douglas inside of her Wadsworth home back in April 2019. Authorities say he strangled the elderly woman to death, sexually assaulted her, then stuffed her in a closet. While her family asked for a life sentence, his attorney asked for mercy.
Gavin, as a 17-year-old boy, can engage in treatment. He can engage in program.
The defendant sat stone-faced the entire time, except when his mom spoke.
He's loyal to a fault. He's compassionate. And this thing that we're sitting here discussing is not who my son is. I don't care how much you want to pluck out evil facts. That's not my son.
I'm so sorry for what I did. I constantly live in regret and shame because of it.
That was the first time that Gavin showed remorse throughout the trial and the sentencing.
To simply say I'm sorry to a victim's family, that's not enough. You can't undo their heartache. You can't undo our heartache.
Despite his late pleas, he will be in prison for the rest of his life. This is Jennifer Mee in the Pinellas County Justice Center. At 19 years old, she was arrested on charges of first-degree murder. But this wasn't the first time Mee grabbed the public's attention. When she was 15 years old, she gained international fame when she developed a case of uncontrollable hiccups.
4 weeks ago tomorrow. Pains, throat pains, back pains. It's unbelievable.
She was initially known as the Hiccup Girl, but that all ended when her hiccups were cured and the media had no more interest in her until she was arrested. Mee was accused of setting up a robbery with victims she had met online. She had reportedly recruited Lamont Newton, her boyfriend at the time, and another friend, Laren Rayford, to help rob victims. Mee met up with a 22-year-old man she encountered online. She lured the man to a vacant home, and her two friends robbed and shot the man, which killed him. They got $50 for the robbery and murder. Mee, Rayford, and Newton all lived together and were arrested within hours of the crime. When Mee had first got arrested, she was in jail, and she had a phone call with her mother where she admitted to her involvement, and the conversation ended up being recorded.
This call may be recorded or monitored. I have a free call from
Jennifer Mee,
an inmate at Pinellas County Jail.
I got charged for murder in the first degree.
Charged for murder in the first degree?
Yes, sir.
What charges included you go?
I didn't do nothing. I was just there at the wrong time, at the wrong place. Hello? Hi, Mama.
Hello, Jennifer. What's going on?
I'm in jail.
Why are you in jail?
From murder in the first degree.
Who'd you kill?
I ain't killed nobody. Because I set everything up. It all went wrong, Mama.
The jury returned a guilty verdict, and Mee was found guilty of first-degree murder.
We, the jury, defendant is guilty of murder in the first degree as charged.
And now the judge will hand down the sentence.
The jury having found you guilty of murder in the first degree, Miss Mee, I will adjudicate you guilty and sentence you to life in prison without parole. I'm ordering the 550 standard fines and court costs. You have 30 days to appeal. Yeah, okay.
Her co-defendants, Rayford and Newton, were also convicted of first-degree felony murder and were sentenced to life in prison.
And she takes out a knife and slashes poor Elizabeth's body. And then to make sure that the job is complete, she takes the knife and slices her from ear to ear.
This is Alyssa Bustamante. She was a troubled 15-year-old girl who lived with her grandparents and siblings in St. Martins, Missouri. On October 21, 2009, Bustamante lured her 9-year-old neighbor, Elizabeth Olten, into the woods behind her house.
She chose extremely close-up, messy methods. Again, very atypical for a female, and even more atypical for a young female like Alyssa was, because she was just a teenager. And the fact that she didn't do it at a distance, she didn't use poison, the types of things that we know female murderers to use, but in fact she used a knife, and then she strangled them on top of using the knife.
She strangled, stabbed, and slit the throat of the innocent girl, then buried her in a pre-dug grave.
Elizabeth, she must have screamed out. Now she's making noise. How do you stop somebody from screaming after being beat and beat? You choke them. The most personal way somebody can kill somebody is by strangulation. It's up close, it's personal. And you're squeezing the life out of somebody. And her hands are around little Elizabeth's neck. And Elizabeth, I can only imagine, is fighting for her life. And then not only does Alyssa strangle Elizabeth, it's not good enough for her. She wants to see and step back and take a look at her work. And she takes out a knife and slashes poor Elizabeth's body. And then to make sure that the job is complete on this lifeless body, she takes the knife and slices her from ear to ear.
She then went to a church dance as if nothing had happened. If you thought Bustamante's crimes were reprehensible, brace yourself for her shocking conduct during the proceedings. The police found Olten's body 2 days later, after Bustamante confessed to the murder. She was arrested and charged with first-degree murder and armed criminal action. She pleaded guilty to a reduced charge of second-degree murder in exchange for avoiding a trial and a possible life sentence without parole. At her sentencing hearing, Bustamante apologized to Olsen's family and said she regretted her actions. However, the judge was not moved by her remorse and sentenced her to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 35 years. She will be eligible for release in 2054 when she will be 60 years old. This is Konrad Schafer. He shocked Osceola County when he and his friends began randomly shooting at the residents, resulting in the tragic death of 17-year-old David Guerrero, who was on his way to work. Before the shootings, Schafer had persuaded his father to purchase a .45 caliber high-point carbine and 100 rounds of ammunition. He allegedly took the gun from his house while his father was asleep, marking the beginning of the neighborhood's nightmare.
This was a 15-year-old who was out semi-automatic rifle shooting up.
Konrad Schafer and 3 of his friends, David Damas, Victoria Rios, and Juan Muriel, terrorized the community for 2 weeks. They even invaded 22-year-old Eric Rupnaran's home and fatally shot him. During his trial, Schafer had this to say to the families of the victims.
15 at a time, I'm really sorry for the things I've done. And I know I did wrong, and I know my apologies don't mean nothing to you. And I know they ain't gonna change how you feel about me.
The family of Eric Rupnaran also seemed to agree.
Eric was my grandson. He was my helper to me and my wife. At this time, my family and I had no intention to forgive the guilty because of such a heinous and brutal crime that was done to my grandson, Eric Rupnaran.
Schafer eventually pleaded guilty to 2 counts of first-degree murder, with over 22 incidents of gunfire damaging homes and vehicles.
Let them suffer and die and rot in jail. Life imprisonment, 100 years each one of them. That is what I want.
He was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences, with the judge stating that if Schafer had been just 3 years older, he would have received the death penalty. This is Seandell Jackson. He's in the Milwaukee County Courthouse at his sentencing for being convicted of murdering a university student. Reportedly, 18-year-old Jackson and his friend were hunting for victims when they saw Potter leave a bar. Nathan Potter, the 21-year-old victim, was a college student at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. They stalked him, accosted him, and demanded money. When Jackson learned that Potter didn't have any cash, Jackson shot him, which killed him. Officials said Jackson fled to Mississippi the day after Potter's murder. Jackson's uncle reportedly tipped off the police on his whereabouts, where he was arrested. When he was on trial, you can see Jackson make gestures toward the victim's family. And when he was escorted out of the courtroom, you can see him smiling at the family. Now, moments before the sentencing, Jackson's mother told the court she first heard about the killing on TV.
When I saw it on the news, I even cried. I'm like, oh my God, I can't imagine what that mother is going through. I never had a clue that my child had anything to do with it. My son is not a monster. He is not a monster.
Jackson now apologizes for what he has done.
I apologize for my behaviors. Please don't take my life from me.
When the judge announced life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, Jackson has an outburst. As the deputies restrain Jackson, you can hear one of Jackson's family members scream to the victim's family. When Jackson is serving life in prison without parole, his friend pleaded guilty to acting as a lookout and was sentenced to 12 years in prison. This is McKenzie Cherill. She's a 17-year-old who was found guilty of murder for causing a car crash that killed her boyfriend and his friend.
McKenzie decided death was the ultimate goal that day. This was not reckless driving. This was murder.
Cherilla's boyfriend, Dominic Russo, and his friend, Davin Flanagan, were in the car when she crashed into the side of a commercial building outside of Cleveland, going 100 miles per hour. Both men were pronounced dead at the scene, and Cherill survived. Prosecutors argued that the teen had a toxic relationship, and Cherill had made violent threats against her boyfriend.
Threatened his property? She threatened to break into his house?
Correct.
Reportedly, she crashed her car on purpose because she wanted to kill her boyfriend, and that his friend was just collateral damage. The prosecutor said the intent was obvious upon seeing that video, that there was only one goal.
You see her driving very calmly and making the right turn, and then all evidence indicates she immediately put the pedal to the metal and drove straight into a building at 100 miles per hour. I think those really demonstrated to us that this was no accident.
And a few days before the crash, she allegedly took the same route to plot the crime. This is where the judge now finds her guilty.
Count 1. Finds the defendant, McKenzie Cherill, guilty of murder, to wit Dominic Russo.
She now stands up to be placed in handcuffs as she continues to tear up.
Count 2. Finds the defendant, McKenzie Cherill, guilty of murder, to wit Davion Flanagan.
Now has a moment to speak before her sentencing.
The families of Dom and Davion, I'm so deeply sorry. I hope one day you can see I would never let this happen or do it on purpose. I wish I could remember what happened. I'm just so sorry. I'm heartbroken. There was no medical condition that caused this as an accident. There was no mechanical failure of the car. A failed suicide attempt is not a defense to murder. There's a very good likelihood, McKenzie, that you will spend the rest of your life in prison. She's sentenced on count 1, 15 years to life. Count 2, 15 years to life, to be served concurrent to each other.
Just sentenced her to 15 years to life in prison. This is Henry Hayes and Kwame Richardson. They're convicted of first-degree murder in the death of 22-month-old Aiden McLendon. The Jacksonville toddler was shot and killed in 2016 in what police say was a gang-related shooting. Henry Hayes and Kwame Richardson showed a little emotion as they learned their sentences. The sentencing was short and led to an emotional exit from the courtroom for Aiden McLendon's family.
This has really taken a toll on Aiden's mom, and she's unable to be here because of that. She just wants it to be over, and I mean, her heart is like totally broken.
Aiden's grandmother, Rhonda McDowell, says the family's pain hasn't eased in the 2 years since the shooting. The boy's great-grandmother was inside the car with Aiden when he was shot.
I pray for families who have no closure. They don't know who murdered their family member. I pray that they will trust God.
In the courtroom, the judge made a point to explain the rules of sentencing juveniles. He pointed out that because both were under 18 at the time, they would have the possibility of release after 2.5 decades. But eventually, the two were sentenced to life in prison, ending a long and emotional case. McDowell says she hopes what happened to Richardson and Hayes sets an example for other gang members.
It's stupid, to say, you shouldn't snitch. If you know something, some families are hurting, and if you know something that can help these families, I think you should come forward.
His great-grandmother says, today and every day, she reflects on his short life.
Aiden will never be forgotten. There's not a day that goes by that I don't think of him. But I think of him with joy and fondness for the 22 months God allowed on this earth.
And the attorneys emphasized, both of these men were sentenced as criminal gang member, something that doesn't happen very often in the state of Florida. Both will be allowed review of their sentences after 25 years. This is Matthew Borges. He was facing a murder charge for the beheading of 16-year-old Lee Valoria Paulino in December 2016. Borges and Paulino were students at Lawrence High School and had reportedly smoked marijuana together in November 2016, which was the last time Paulino was seen alive. Paulino's body was discovered by a dog walker near the Marac River 2 weeks after he went missing. The details of the scene were chilling. Listen as the dog walker explained what he saw.
As I approached, I got closer. I saw her really sniffing at a particular area. So I pulled her back, and when I looked, kind of second-guessed myself. I thought I saw a dead body, but I wasn't too sure because, it was missing some limbs.
At first, Borges was not considered a suspect, but the tide of evidence began pointing unmistakably in his direction. During the trial, prosecutor Jay Gabito argued that there was an overwhelming amount of evidence incriminating Borges. The allegations against Borges were disturbing. It was suggested that he had stabbed Paulino multiple times before decapitating him. When the verdict was delivered, Borges displayed an eerie lack of emotion.
That the defendant, Matthew Borges, is guilty on the charge of first-degree murder.
Eventually, he was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole only after serving 30 years.
It is ordered by the court that he be punished by confinement for a term of life with parole eligibility on the theory of extreme atrocity and cruelty at 30 years and parole eligibility on the theory of deliberate premeditation at 30 years to run concurrent.
This is Antonio Barbeau and Nathan Pape. In September 2012, Antonio and Nathan conspired to brutally murder Antonio's great-grandmother, 76-year-old Barbara Olson.
She said that she's gonna have to call Antonio's mom, and Antonio kept looking at me, and then he hit her in the head.
What happened next?
We got in, and then I looked to Nate and nodded and shook my head as in yes or no. He nodded, and then I took the first swing.
Okay, and when you say that you took the first swing, is with the hand axe?
Yes, sir.
The kids bludgeoned her to death using a hammer and a hatchet, then stole her purse. What's even more chilling is that after committing this heinous crime, they used part of the stolen money to buy marijuana and pizza.
We were gonna try to scare her to get money and then use force if needed.
When you say use force if needed, was there a discussion about what type of force you might use?
An attack, I guess to kill.
During the legal proceedings, Antonio Barbeau changed his plea from not guilty by reason of mental illness or defect to no contest, reaching an agreement with the prosecution. However, he was very remorseful.
I know I don't show my emotions much. I myself am not sure why. But that doesn't mean I don't.
Nathan Pape also had some things to let off his chest.
I just want to say that I'm truly sorry for everything that happened.
However, despite his plea and expressions of remorse, he and Nathan were sentenced to life imprisonment. They were both remorseful as they left the court. This is Nicolas Cruz. He carried out the deadliest high school shooting in U.S. history.
My name is Nick, and I'm going to be the next school shooter of 2018. My goal is at least 20 people with an AR-15 and a couple tracer rounds.
Oh my God! Cruz killed 17 people and wounded 17 others at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida on February 14, 2018.
I was still a child after I watched you kill 2 of my friends. I was still a child when you shot me with your gun. You shot me in the leg, and if you looked me in the face like I'm looking you right now, you would see the scars on it from the hot shrapnel that was lodged into it.
Despite the horrifying nature of Cruz's offenses, his actions during sentencing managed to shock everyone present. Cruz was arrested and charged with 17 counts of premeditated first-degree murder and 17 counts of attempted first-degree murder. He pleaded guilty to all the charges, admitting his responsibility for the massacre.
What's going on today, bro?
The demons, man.
Demons?
Voices.
Voices and demons?
Where's the voices? Where the f*** am I? Holy what happened?
Shut up.
The jury could not reach a unanimous verdict on whether to recommend the death penalty for Cruz. As a result, he was automatically sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for each of the 17 murders as required by Florida law. He was also sentenced to an additional 34 life sentences for the attempted murders. At his sentencing, Cruz attempted an apology.
I am very sorry for what I did, and I have to live with it every day. And that if I were to get a second chance, I will do everything in my power to try to help others. And I am doing this for you, and I do not care if you do not believe me. And I love you, and I know you don't believe me, but I have to live with this every day.
Cruz showed no remorse or empathy for his actions, and instead wore a red prison jumpsuit, glasses. He even laughed at one point during the proceedings.
One of the reasons that you did this, I'm talking to you right now, is to be famous. So I think that someone will steal that fame from you. Whoever takes care of you will own that fame. It's time for you to be afraid of me.
Cruz's lack of emotion and his escape from the death penalty outraged and disappointed many of the victims' relatives who had hoped for a different outcome.
Though I'm angry about this verdict and believe you do not deserve to share the same earth as the rest of us, unlike you, in a state of great adversity, I can proudly say I'll never stoop as low as you will. I'll never take my anger, pain, and suffering out on others because I am stronger than you. This entire community that stands behind me is stronger than you, and we are stronger than the hate that you give. My name is Sam Fuentes. You will not forget me. You will not forget us, not until the last day that you breathe.
This is Dylan Shoemaker in a Buffalo, New York courthouse. He's at his sentencing after being convicted of second-degree murder. At age 16, Shoemaker was babysitting his girlfriend's child when she went to work that evening. He was inside a Springville home that he shared with his parents. Later that evening, Shoemaker beat the 23-month-old child, and a result of his injuries, that young child died. Dylan Shoemaker would later be arrested and charged with the murder of the toddler, along with child abuse charges. Shoemaker was reportedly trying to get the child to stop crying, and he never wanted to hurt the child or for him to die. But the jurors didn't buy it, and Shoemaker was convicted of second-degree murder. Now, watch closely as Shoemaker enters the courtroom. Before he could even get set up behind the defense table, he starts crying and telling everyone how sorry he
I
is.
didn't mean to kill Oscar. Actually, I really didn't. I really think I did right. I didn't mean to hurt him.
When Shoemaker was awaiting his trial, he had a phone call with his mother, and the conversation ended up being recorded. Now listen to the judge on what Shoemaker said to his mother.
In a phone call to your mother from the holding center, you stated, and I got a quote from the court reporter, I am a 16-year-old blonde. Probably all I have to do is cry in front of the jury, and they're going to feel sorry for me.
I can't take back what was done. I wish I could. I would give my life for Austin.
Shoemaker was later sentenced to the maximum punishment.
That you be sentenced to an indeterminate term of imprisonment, which will have a maximum of life. The court hereby imposes a minimum sentence of 25 years.
But that sentence was later modified to 18 years to life. This is Aiden Fucci, who pled guilty in court for the murder of his classmate when he was only 14 years old.
Having fun in a cop car.
Yep.
Fucci was classmates with a 13-year-old girl from Patriot Oaks Academy in St. Johns County, Florida. Fucci stabbed her 114 times. Her dead body was later recovered from the woods. Now this video shows Fucci and his parents in the interrogation room.
That Snapchat that you did was not very smart.
It's all over. You're all over the internet, Negor. This is seriously.
It's very serious.
This is no joke. This is your whole life. Your whole life.
And ours.
And ours.
A video from prosecutors showed Fucci and the girl allegedly walking together right before she was murdered. Then about 90 minutes later, the video shows Fucci allegedly running away from the area where the body was found.
114 stab wounds, 49 defensive wounds, 35 wounds to the head and neck, 29 to the back and shoulder, and 6 fatal wounds.
After Fucci pled guilty to first-degree murder, the judge now hands down his sentence.
Having entered a plea of guilty to the crime of first-degree murder, I sentence you to life in prison. Because of your age, you are eligible for review of the sentence in 25 years.
After Fucci was sentenced, he stood still with a little movement. This is Brandon Spencer in Los Angeles County Superior Court. He was charged with 4 counts of attempted murder.
I'm sorry for what happened, Your Honor, but he's life in prison.
On a Halloween night, 19-year-old Spencer attended a crowded party on the University of Southern California campus in Los Angeles. Suddenly, gunshots went off and it was mayhem. Everyone scattered, some ran in fear and others hid. Reportedly, Spencer also ran, but he was stopped in a parking lot half a mile away where he got picked up by the LAPD for questioning. A couple days later, he was charged with 4 counts of attempted murder. 4 people were injured, but fortunately, no one died.
That if you are so intent on killing someone that you're willing to shoot them and at the same time open fire into a crowd.
Prosecutors argued during the trial the shooting was a result of a feud between Spencer and a rival gang member, and that he was a documented, well-known gang member himself.
I'm not a bad person, but I made mistakes. I'm not just some gangbanger that she tried to betray me as.
Spencer maintained his innocence throughout the trial, but the jury didn't agree. Nearly 50 family members and friends packed the courtroom. As the judge read the sentence, sheriff deputies had to restrain Spencer as he banged his head on the defense table. Reportedly, Brandon was sentenced to 40 years to life for 4 counts of attempted murder. This is Philip Chisholm, who's facing charges for murdering his math teacher, Colleen Ritzer, at Danvers High School bathroom. Colleen was known for her dedication to her students, and on that fateful day, she had asked the 14-year-old Chisholm to stay after school for additional lessons. Little did she know that her kindness would lead to a horrific end. Chisholm came prepared with a knife, a change of clothes, and gloves. He followed her into a restroom where he took her life. His brutality didn't stop there. He robbed, assaulted, and abused her afterward. He disposed of her lifeless body by placing it in a garbage bin and dragging it behind the school. In a futile attempt to cover up his crime, Chisholm went into town and used her credit card to buy a movie ticket. However, he was traced down and arrested by the police the next morning. He still had Colleen's blood on his hands.
He is pure evil, and evil can never be rehabilitated.
You must imprison this killer for the rest of his life.
While the magnitude of Chisholm's crimes is daunting, his courtroom behavior will leave you in disbelief. Chisholm faced multiple charges, including murder, aggravated rape, and armed robbery. Throughout the court proceedings, Chisholm displayed a shocking lack of remorse, even as the victim's father read his statement.
Killer knew exactly what he was doing and has never shown remorse.
His demeanor and actions demonstrated a complete disregard for the gravity of his crimes and the immeasurable pain he had inflicted on Colleen Ritzer's family, even in the face of a touching tribute by Colleen's brother.
Put this animal behind bars to the maximum possible sentence. Do not give this coward the opportunity to shatter another family's lives.
Chisholm remained cold and unrepentant. His attorneys claimed that he was mentally unstable. That did work. In February 2016, he was sentenced to life in prison with eligibility for parole in 25 years.
Court will impose the mandatory life sentence for the murder of Colleen Ritzer and set a parole eligibility date of 25 years, the highest level our law allows.
This is Martis Fuller. He is on trial in Kenosha County, Wisconsin. He's accused of killing his ex-girlfriend and attempting to kill her mother. Reportedly, 15-year-old Martis Fuller broke into his ex-girlfriend's house armed with a handgun. When his ex-girlfriend was listening to music in her bedroom, she was shot and killed. After hearing gunshots, the mother emerged from her bedroom and came face to face with the shooter, and she was shot twice. The mother would survive the shooting and identify Martis Fuller to the police. Fuller pleaded not guilty, but the jurors disagreed.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of first-degree intentional homicide.
After the jury found Fuller guilty on 3 counts, he showed what appeared to be emotion for the first time on trial. During Fuller's sentencing, he continued to maintain that he is innocent, and moments before he is sent to prison for the rest of his life, he put together a statement for the courtroom judge.
Judge, Mr. Fuller's prepared a statement that he asked that I read on his behalf.
Okay.
Martis writes, I wanted to write this giving my sincerest apologies to this family I once shared time and love with. Truthfully, I am sorry about the pain you've all suffered through, but more importantly, the loss of my ex-girlfriend Kaylee that I loved too. But I have to continue to stand innocent because I am. And I hope you all can eventually see in your hearts that I am not the person the media has made me out to be.
Now the judge will deliver the sentence.
I don't have any ability to trust that you will never commit these acts again. So in the interest of protecting the public, acknowledging the seriousness of these acts, the court orders that on count 1, you are sentenced to life in prison without eligibility for extended supervision.
As Fuller's being sentenced to spend the rest of his life behind bars, it appears he's completely unfazed.
Fuller had no visible reaction, walking out of court, heading to prison for the rest of his life.
This is Rachel Schoaf and Sheila Eddy, who are both in court today for the murder of their friend when they were only 16 years old.
Their scheme was to hide knives on their bodies and to attack Skyler at an agreed-upon moment.
In Star City, West Virginia, Schoaf and Eddy were friends with 16-year-old Skyler Neese. Reportedly, Schoaf and Eddy decided they didn't like Neese anymore, so they planned to kill her.
Sheila Eddy and Rachel Schoaf carried out that plan. Together they stabbed and killed Skyler.
After Schoaf's confession, both teens were arrested. Schoaf agreed to plead guilty to second-degree murder in exchange for her cooperation in the case.
I'm so sorry. I don't know if there's a proper way to make this apology because there are not even words to describe the guilt and remorse that I feel each day for what I've done. I hurt the Neese family and those who love Skyler. I hurt my parents and shamed my family. May God bring eternal peace to Skyler and the entire Neese family.
After securing a plea deal, the judge now gives Schoaf her sentence.
Rachel Schoaf, it is the sentence of the court that you be imprisoned in the West Virginia State Penitentiary for a period of 30 years.
But she will have the possibility of parole in 10 years. And now for Eddy.
It is the sentence of the court that you be imprisoned in the West Virginia State Penitentiary for the rest of your natural life. That sentence is technically with mercy, which makes you eligible for parole after you have served 15 years.
This is Austin Myers and Timothy Mosley. They were both convicted of murdering 18-year-old Justin Back in Waynesville, Ohio. The two men, Myers and Mosley, went to Back's house in an attempt to rob a safe that belonged to his father. During the robbery, Back was strangled with a choke wire.
The idea of strangling him, that way it would create no mess, pretty much be an easier job to handle. Obviously, Justin was trying to put up a fight, and he wasn't overpowering us.
Justin Back was then stabbed 21 times until he died.
Justin was trying to ask us why. He was pleading to stop and pretty much begging for his life.
On trial, Mosley testified against Myers to obtain a plea bargain where he pled guilty and was sentenced to life in prison. Finally, for Myers, he takes the stand in front of the jury, asking them to spare his life for his family in hopes of avoiding the death sentence.
If you choose for me to die, it's only going to cause more pain and suffering for another family, not me. It won't hurt me. I won't feel anything. It's going to hurt more innocent people.
This is now the father of Justin Back speaking.
I'm not going to stand up here and tell you how much I hate you.
That is without question. I would just hope that every time you close your eyes at night, you see my son, Justin.
After the jury recommended the death sentence, this is Myers' last chance to plead for his life in front of the judge.
I think there's a lot of good things I can do with my life if you allow me to keep my life.
And the judge doesn't buy it. He hands down the maximum sentence.
The defendant does not understand how precious life is. Therefore, the sentence of death shall be imposed upon Austin Gregory Myers on the charge of aggravated murder.
Nothing but a slight nod. At just 19 years old, this made Myers the youngest Ohio individual to be put on death row. He is currently awaiting his execution at Chillicothe Correctional Institution.
There were so many lives destroyed by this, and it was just for nothing. I mean, there was no money in the safe. There was nothing in there. They did this for basically nothing.
This is Willard Miller and Jeremy Goodale, and at just 16 years old, they are both charged for the murder of their high school Spanish teacher. Reportedly, it was over a bad grade.
We then moved her off of the trail, where I then struck her, and she died as a result.
Miller and Goodale went to Fairfield High School in southeastern Iowa. Noima Graber was the Spanish teacher at the school, and Miller was one of her students. After he received a bad grade from Graber, he and his friend Goodale planned to kill her.
We discussed a general plan. I'll stand up here, look out, wait for Ms. Graber to show up.
Graber went for her usual walk at Shadow-Waka City Park. The boys knew that as they stalked her, and they waited to ambush her.
Here she comes, and she walked by and hit her in the back of the head, and then I said, we should make sure she's dead, so we hit her a couple more times.
They then dragged her into the woods and beat her to death with a baseball bat.
What was the plan after that? There wasn't a plan beyond that. Like hide the body, bury the body, save the body. At that time, we were going to hide the body. I guess in our arrogance, we kind of assumed that nobody would ever find her.
Not long after both boys were arrested, court documents alleged that the witness who knew Goodale showed law enforcement Snapchat messages that showed Goodale and Miller's involvement in the murder. One of the Snapchat messages saying, "Point of view, you're my Spanish teacher, and this is the last thing you see." Followed by, "Time to hide a body." Jeremy Goodale would later plead guilty and testify against his best friend Miller.
I understood that he had the intent to kill Mrs. Graber.
What is your plea to murder in the first degree, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
This is the moment that Goodale gets to speak before his sentence.
I've had time to think on what to say, and I'm sorry, truly sorry. Every day I wish I could go back and stop myself. I can't comprehend losing a loved one in such an awful way.
And now the judge hands down his sentence.
The defendants shall be sentenced to life with the possibility of parole after 25 years.
Now for Miller, this is him apologizing before he receives a sentence.
I'd like to take this opportunity to wholeheartedly accept responsibility for the role that I've played in the murder of Noima Graber. To the family, I'm sincerely sorry for the distress that I've caused you and the devastation. And I ask that I'm given a chance, and I don't want to be institutionalized. I don't want to be in so long that I forget about what mattered, where I come from, and I look forward to getting through this.
And now the judge has some final last words.
The defendant, Willard Noble Chayton Miller, should be sentenced to life with the possibility of parole after 35 years.
Miller seems to be completely unfazed. This is Michael Brady, who attempted a prison escape that resulted in the death of 4 prison workers at Pasco Tank Correctional Institution in North Carolina.
I stabbed him like 4 to 8 times. I hit Jeffrey Howe until he stopped moving. I don't know how many times I hit him with a hammer.
Brady was facing 24 years in prison for an attempted murder conviction after he shot at a North Carolina state trooper. And 4 years into his sentence, Brady and 3 other inmates brutally murdered 4 prison workers with hammers and scissors.
That man, Michael Brady, beat that man, George Midget, like he was trying to bust concrete.
Brady then tried to hop a fence, but then was captured at gunpoint.
It was like a bloodbath, and I stepped in between Jeffrey and Lindy, and I slid trying to get in because the whole elevator floor was nothing but blood.
During the trial, the prosecutors argued that Brady was the one who planned the attack and had no remorse for the killings.
We know who originated the plan, we know who led the plan,
After Brady is found guilty, he now takes the stand at his sentencing.
I'm up here to tell the truth. You can ask me anything you want. I'm gonna tell the truth. Whether it hurts me, whether it helps me, I don't care about that.
You don't believe you're crazy, do you?
No, I don't think I'm crazy, no.
And you do know the difference between right and wrong.
Yes.
So you know murder is wrong.
Murder is a different name for death, but yes.
Your freedom meant more than their lives.
Yes.
And now the judge reads out the jury's recommendation.
The jury unanimously recommended that the defendant be sentenced to death.
Brady seems completely emotionless, and the judge later agrees on the death penalty, where now sits locked up in Colorado awaiting his death sentence.